I need to tell you something about the worst trading day I've ever had. I'm not telling you this because I lost the most money. I've had much bigger losses. But I want you to understand what that loss did to me. I lost $800 on a single trade. Not a lot in the grand scheme of things. I've made that back dozens of times. But that day, that $800 loss destroyed me. Not for an hour, for a week. I couldn't sleep that night. I replayed the trade over and over. What did I miss? What did I do wrong? Why didn't I see it coming? And underneath all those questions was one feeling that wouldn't go away. I felt like a failure, not like I'd made a mistake, like I was the mistake itself. That $800 felt like proof that I didn't belong in this game, that I wasn't smart enough, that I was fooling myself thinking I could make this work. And here's the real issue. Intellectually, I knew that one trade meant nothing. I knew my strategy had a 60% win rate, which meant 40% of my trades were supposed to lose. I was aware of all of this. But knowing didn't help, because I could never treat that loss like a statistic. I perceived it as a verdict on me. And this was one of the most fatal mistakes most traders make, taking losses personally. And when you take losses personally, you can't stay detached. And when you can't stay detached, you can't trade consistently. When you perceive it personally, operating your system objectively becomes impossible. Your emotions have kicked in, and your probability of making mistakes has increased. Today, I want to teach you why losses feel so personal and how to finally separate yourself from your results. If you can accomplish this, you'll have freed yourself from one of the biggest mistakes made in trading. Let me take you back to that day. I'd been trading for about 2 years. I thought I was finally getting consistent. My last 3 months had been profitable, not huge, but steady. I was feeling good about my progress. While everything was progressing as it should, something happened one day. I saw a breakout setup, looked clean, all my criteria were met. I entered. The moment I clicked buy, something felt wrong this time. But I didn't close the position. I told myself I was following my plan. Price moved against me immediately somehow, hit my stop. I'd lost $800. And that's when everything fell apart. Not the trade. Me. I closed my platform, sat there staring at the wall. And I felt this wave of shame wash over me. Shame. Suddenly, I was facing this emotion, over a trade that was supposed to be part of my system, no less. A trade that was supposed to happen 40% of the time. But in that moment, it didn't make me feel like probability. It made me feel like failure. I spent the rest of that day questioning everything, my strategy, my ability, whether I should even be doing this, whether I was suitable for this work. I questioned for hours. My mood was destroyed. My confidence was shattered. And what was the worst part? I knew I was being irrational. I knew one loss didn't mean anything. But I couldn't stop feeling like it meant everything. So why did I feel this way that day when I hadn't felt this way before? That was the real question. Here's what I didn't understand then. I wasn't just losing money. I was losing something much more important. My sense of identity. Because somewhere along the way I'd made a fatal mistake. I'd fused my identity with my trading results. When I won, I was a good trader. When I lost, I was a bad trader. My self-worth wasn't stable. It was tied to results. And that's what destroyed me that day. It fluctuated with every tick of the market. And that's why that $800 loss felt so personal. It wasn't attacking my account. It was attacking me. Let me show you why this happens. Why losses feel like personal failures instead of what they actually are. Normal variance in a probability game. The first reason losses feel personal is identity fusion. This is when you can't separate who you are from what you do. You don't say, I'm someone who trades. You say, I am a trader. Sounds like a small difference. It's not. This identity can actually be the main thing sabotaging your trading career. Most people fall into this trap. When trading becomes your identity, every trade becomes a test of that identity. A winning trade confirms you. You are a trader. You belong here. You're good at this. A losing trade threatens you. Maybe you're not a trader. Maybe you don't belong. Maybe you're not good enough. Your identity is now at stake in every single trade. And when your identity is threatened, your brain goes into protection mode. If you're trading in this state, this identity will sooner or later bring you bad results. That's why one loss can ruin your entire day. It's not about the money. It's about what the loss seems to say about who you are. I did this for 2 years without realizing it. Every winning trade made me feel validated. Every losing trade made me feel like a fraud. My sense of self was completely tied to my last trade, and that's exhausting, because you're never stable. You're only as good as your most recent result. And in a game where 40 to 50% of your trades are designed to lose, you're constantly throwing yourself into identity crisis. This is great torture you're inflicting on yourself, and it's probably destroying your trading career. If you're going through or have gone through a process where you perceive trading personally, tell me about it in the comments. I'd like to discuss this with you. Let's continue. The second reason is ego investment. Every trade becomes a test of your intelligence. You need to be right. Not because being right makes you money, but because being right protects your ego. When you enter a trade, you're making a prediction. Price is going to go up or down. And when that prediction is wrong, it doesn't just feel like the market moved against you. It feels like you were wrong. And being wrong feels like being stupid. So you start avoiding losses not because they cost you money, but because they cost you your self-image. I remember analyzing a trade for 30 minutes. Everything lined up. I was confident. I entered. It lost. And my first thought wasn't about the market or the setup. My first thought was, I was so sure. How did I miss that? I felt stupid, and that feeling made me second-guess the next 10 setups. Because I didn't want to feel stupid again. That's what ego investment does. It makes you trade to protect your self-image instead of trading to make money. And those are two completely different games. The third reason is scoreboard thinking. You're treating trading like a pass-fail exam. Every trade is either right or wrong, win or lose, pass or fail. And your grade determines whether you're a good trader or a bad trader. But trading isn't a test. It's a probability game. In a test, if you get the answer wrong, you failed. In trading, you can do everything right and still lose. Because you're not trying to be right. You're trying to execute a strategy that has a positive expectancy over time. But when you think in pass-fail terms, every loss feels like you failed, and every win feels like you passed. So you're constantly being judged by yourself, based on outcomes you can't fully control. I used to keep a mental scoreboard. 3 wins today, I'm doing great. 2 losses today, I'm struggling, I'm failing. My entire self-assessment was based on whether I was currently winning or losing, not whether I was executing well, not whether I was following my rules, just outcomes. And outcomes in trading are noisy. They don't tell you if you're doing things right. They only tell you if probability worked in your favor that day. But I didn't see it that way. I saw wins as proof I was good, and losses as proof I wasn't. And that kept me on an emotional roller coaster that never stopped. The fourth reason is your brain is a meaning-making machine. It can't just see data. It has to create stories about that data. You don't just lose a trade. Your brain creates a narrative. I lost because I'm not good enough. I lost because I'm never going to make it. I lost because I don't have what it takes. These aren't facts, they're stories. But they feel like facts. And those stories shape how you see yourself. I lost 3 trades in a row once. Just normal variance. My strategy was fine, but my brain didn't see variance. It saw a pattern, and it created a story. You're on a losing streak. Something's wrong with you. You're getting worse. You're going to lose everything. That story felt so real that I changed my entire strategy. Not because it was broken, because my brain convinced me I was broken. That's what meaning-making does. It turns random variants into personal narratives, and those narratives become your reality even when they're completely false. Now let me show you what personal attachment costs you. When you take losses personally, you can't take the next trade without fear. Because the next trade isn't just a trade, it's another test of whether you're good enough, another opportunity to fail. So you hesitate, you skip good setups, not because they don't meet your criteria, because you're afraid of feeling that shame again. Or you do the opposite, you revenge trade. Because now, you need to prove to yourself that you're not a failure. You need to make it back, not for the money, for your ego, to restore your self-image. And revenge trades almost always lose, because you're not trading a strategy, you're trading your emotions. Personal attachment also creates analysis paralysis. You overanalyze everything, because you can't afford to be wrong again. So you look for more confirmation, more certainty, and you end up missing the trade entirely. Or you take it late when the move is already over. And personal attachment is exhausting. Your emotional state is tied to your P&L. Every tick up feels good. Every tick down feels bad. By the end of the day, you're mentally destroyed. Not because trading is hard, because you've been on an emotional roller coaster for 6 hours, and you can't sustain that. Eventually you burn out, not because you're a bad trader, because you're treating every trade like it's a judgment on your worth as a human being. Let me tell you about two traders I know. Let's call them Tyler and Andrew. Both started around the same time. Both learned similar strategies. Both had similar capital, but they approached losses completely differently. Tyler took every loss personally. When he won, he'd feel amazing. He was a genius. He figured it out. He was going to be rich. When he lost, he'd spiral. He was terrible. He didn't belong. He should quit. His identity shifted with every trade. His mood depended entirely on his last result. He couldn't be consistent because he wasn't the same person from trade to trade. Some days he was confident Tyler who took every setup. Some days he was terrified Tyler who couldn't pull the trigger. His results reflected that chaos, some months up, some months down, but no real progress, because he couldn't detach. Andrew was different. When he won, he'd say the setup worked this time. When he lost, he'd say the setup didn't work this time. No drama, no identity shift, no mood change. He understood he was executing a strategy with a 60% win rate, which meant 40% of his trades were supposed to lose. And those losses didn't mean anything about him. They just meant probability expressed itself. His identity was stable. He was someone who executed a trading plan. Win or lose, that didn't change. And because his identity was stable, his behavior was consistent. He took every setup that met his criteria. He didn't skip trades out of fear. He didn't force trades to prove himself. He just executed. And over time, his results compounded. Not because he was smarter than Tyler, but because he wasn't destroying himself emotionally after every loss. So how do you become like Andrew? How do you stop taking losses personally and start staying detached? Let me give you the exact shifts that changed everything for me. The first shift is separating your identity from your results. You are not your last trade. You are not your win rate. You are not your P&L. You are the person who executes a trading strategy. That's it. The strategy wins sometimes. The strategy loses sometimes. But you remain the same regardless. I started saying this to myself after every trade. I am not this trade. I am the process. Win or lose doesn't change who I am. It sounds simple, but it rewired how I saw myself. I stopped being a trader who wins or loses. I became someone who trades. And that separation made losses feel less personal, because they weren't attacking me anymore. They were just outcomes of a process I was executing. The second shift is seeing losses as feedback, not failure. A loss is not a judgment. It's information. It tells you the setup didn't work this time. It doesn't tell you you're bad at this. It doesn't tell you you should quit. It just tells you probability didn't work in your favor. When I started treating losses as data instead of verdicts, everything changed. I'd lose a trade, and instead of spiraling, I'd just note it. Okay, that one didn't work. What's next? No emotion, no story, just data. And data doesn't hurt your ego. Only stories do. The third shift is zooming out. One trade means nothing. 10 trades mean very little. 100 trades start to show a pattern. But most traders judge themselves on every single trade. This is like flipping a coin once and deciding the coin is broken because it landed on tails. You need sample size. I started reviewing my trading in blocks of 50 trades, not individual trades, 50 at a time. And I'd ask myself one question. Did I execute my plan consistently across these 50 trades? If yes, I was doing my job, even if 30 of them lost. Because my job isn't to win every trade. My job is to execute the plan and let probability do its work over time. That perspective made individual losses irrelevant. They were just data points in a much larger distribution. The fourth shift is changing your language. Language shapes how you think, and how you think shapes how you feel. I stopped saying I lost. I started saying that trade lost. I stopped saying I was wrong. I started saying the setup didn't work this time. These sound like small changes. They're not. When you say I lost, you're making it personal. You are the loser. When you say that trade lost, you're separating yourself from the outcome. The trade is the thing that lost, not you. This shift alone reduced the emotional weight of losses by half because I wasn't carrying them anymore. The market was. The fifth shift is pre-accepting variance. Before every trade, I started saying this might lose, and that's completely fine. Not as a way to avoid disappointment, but as a way to align my expectations with reality. If your strategy has a 60% win rate, you should expect 4 out of 10 trades to lose. That's not failure, that's the system working as designed. When I started expecting losses, they stopped surprising me. And when they didn't surprise me, they didn't hurt me. They were just part of the process. The sixth shift is building identity outside of trading. If trading is the only thing that defines you, then trading results will always feel personal, because you have nothing else to anchor your sense of self. I started investing time in relationships, in hobbies, in things completely unrelated to the market, and my self-worth stopped being tied to whether I had a good trading day. I could lose 3 trades in a row and still feel good about myself. Because I was more than my trading results. I was a whole person with a full life, and trading was just one part of that life, not the center of it. Here's what these shifts created. Losses stopped ruining my day. I could take a loss, close the trade, and move on without any emotional residue. No shame, no doubt, no spiral, just execution. I could take the next trade without fear, because the last trade, win or lose, didn't mean anything about me. It was just a trade. I stopped revenge trading, because I had nothing to prove. A loss didn't threaten my identity, so I didn't need to make it back to feel whole again. My emotional state stabilized. I wasn't on a roller coaster anymore. I was calm, steady, regardless of what the market did, and my consistency improved dramatically because I was finally the same trader every single day. Not confident trader one day and terrified trader the next. Just consistent trader executing the plan. And here's the paradox I didn't see coming. The moment I stopped needing wins to feel good about myself, I started winning more. Not because my strategy improved, because I was finally trading the market instead of trading my ego. Let me tell you what happened after I made these shifts. I had another losing trade. Similar setup to that $300 loss. This one lost $200. And you know what I felt? Nothing. Not in a numb way. In a detached way. I looked at the trade, noted it didn't work, closed it, moved on. No replay loop, no shame, no questioning myself. It was just a trade that lost. And that's when I knew I'd finally figured it out. I'd separated myself from my results. The market could no longer attack my identity, because my identity wasn't in the market, it was in the process. And the process was independent of any single outcome. That detachment gave me something I'd been chasing for years. Peace. Not the peace of never losing. The peace of knowing that losses don't mean anything about me. They're just part of the game. And I'm here to play the game, not to prove myself, not to validate my worth, just to execute a process I trust, and let the results take care of themselves over time. If you're reading this and you take losses personally, I want you to know something. You're not weak. You're not broken. You're human. Humans attach meaning to things. Humans tie their worth to their performance. That's normal. But in trading, normal kills you. Because trading requires you to do something very few people can do. Separate your identity from outcomes you can't fully control. Accept that you can do everything right and still lose, and be okay with that. Not pretend to be okay. Actually be okay. That's the work. Not learning better strategies. Not finding better setups. Learning how to stay detached when the market moves against you. Learning how to see losses as data instead of verdicts. Learning how to keep your sense of self stable regardless of what your P&L does today. And here's the truth nobody tells you. You don't learn this overnight. It takes time. It takes practice. It takes watching yourself spiral after a loss and catching it. Watching yourself attach meaning to a trade and stopping it. Watching yourself fuse your identity with results and separating it. Over and over. Until one day, you lose a trade and you feel nothing. Not because you don't care, but because you finally understand. That trade has nothing to do with you. It's just probability expressing itself. And you're just here to execute the process. That's detachment. And detachment is what separates traders who survive from traders who burn out. Not intelligence, not strategy. The ability to lose without taking it personally. Master that, and you can trade for decades. Miss that, and you won't last 2 years.